Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my October wrap up, and some of you guys might be watching this video and going, hey, it's not quite the end of October yet, and also isn't it still the middle of the autumn readathon? And both of those things are correct, but I've just realized that my time is just extremely constrained right now, so I'm not going to get very much reading done between now and the end of the month, and anything that I do get done is probably just going to be one book that rolls over to the next month. I'm just going to do my wrap up now to make it easier on myself, and I'm not going to try to cram in another wrap up before the end of the month is out. So I didn't make a lot of videos this month. One of them was my TBR for Dewey's 24-hour readathon and the autumn readathon, but I'll be talking about those books kind of in this video. And then the other video that I made was a Friday Reads, and in that video I actually talked about a lot of the books that I read this month. In that video, I talked about American Fire by Monica Hess, You Bring the Distant Near by Mitali Perkins, and Temporary People by Deepak Unnikrishnan. So if you are interested in my thoughts in any of those books, then I recommend going to check out that Friday Reads video, because I don't want to talk about them all over again and make this video longer than it needs to be. So yeah, that'll be linked up in the cards in case you are interested in hearing my thoughts on those books. I have very varying thoughts on these books. And some of them are more complicated than others, but yeah, check out that video for more info on any of these books. Another book I talked about in that video that I was in the middle of when I recorded that was The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America by Richard Rothstein. This is a nonfiction book, and I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I would not recommend this to absolutely everyone, because this is a little bit of a drier nonfiction read, and it's very fact heavy, so it's not necessarily a narrative nonfiction or a memoir or anything like that. I feel like if you aren't super interested in the topic of segregation and housing in the United States, I don't necessarily know if this is going to appeal to you, but if you are interested in those topics like I am, then I do recommend this book a lot. Richard Rothstein does a really great job of just covering a bunch of different points in history in a bunch of different cities here in the United States and talking about different aspects of the law and government that sort of forced segregation past the point of when you would think. It talks a lot about things like the federal FHA, the Federal Housing Association, and different housing programs that existed here in the United States or still exist here in the United States, and how they discriminated against Black people at various points in time through various means, and how it was all technically legal, and how the government sort of made it okay for certain organizations to be able to get away with certain things, how that has led to the way that our neighborhoods are very much segregated here in a lot of different cities across the United States, including Chicago. So yeah, it was really, really fascinating reading this stuff. It was also really fascinating because there's a lot of suburbs of Chicago, which is basically where I live and have grown up, mentioned in this book, which I was not expecting, and it was slightly horrifying, some of the laws that have been passed. Obviously, some of them have been fixed by now, but the effects of those things are still felt in the way that a lot of these cities and suburbs are handled, and even just the people who live there and whatnot. So yeah, this was just a really fantastic read. I definitely recommend it if you are a fan of nonfiction. I just found it to be so interesting. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished was the Miles Morales books by Jason Reynolds, which I think I also mentioned in that Friday Reads video. This book was a lot of fun. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because it's not the best book ever, and the ending is sort of easy, but I think that if you like comic books, or even if you like comic book movies, this is a really great one to pick up. I really, really like Jason Reynolds' writing style, so that already really works for me. But I also just really like what he did with the character of Miles Morales, and just sort of looking at what it's like for a poor Black kid to try to be a superhero. It is sort of a middle grade young adult, sort of that borderline age group, so it doesn't get super complex or super complicated. The mystery that's happening, or the thing he's trying to deal with, is pretty simplistic, but I feel if you read comic books, you should be used to that to a certain extent. But yeah, if you've been wanting to give sort of these superhero novelizations a try, this is a really good one to pick up. I've tried a couple of others and they've been pretty hit or miss. I feel a lot of it really depends on who the author is. And so I love Jason Reynolds' writing, so this was a good one for me. The next book that I finished was Wife of Gods by Quay Corte. This is a mystery book that I picked up, and it's the first book in a series. I picked this one up sort of on a whim. I don't remember how I heard about it, probably through Book Riot, because that's a lot of how I hear about books like this, but I decided to pick it up because it sounded interesting and different. It takes place in Ghana, and you are following this detective named Darko Dawson. He is a really solid detective who works in the capital of Ghana, and he gets called away to a smaller village in Ghana to help solve the mystery of this woman who was like a medical student. She was found dead. The question is like whether or not she offended some of the people in the village, or if someone just attacked her randomly on the road, etc., etc. But yeah, it was good. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because it wasn't like, again, overwhelmingly amazing, but it was a pretty solid mystery. If you are someone who likes mystery books, if you like detective stories, this is a pretty good one to pick up, especially if you are looking for one that doesn't take place in like the United States or the UK. The detective in here is a really interesting character. I felt like there were sort of two sides to him. There's very much like the good at his job detective sort of situation, but then he also has this sort of like darker side to him, which was really interesting to see how it plays out with like his family and with his work and things like that. But yeah, I didn't really guess what the ending was, which is always a positive thing to me, and it definitely left me wanting to read more of the books in the series, which I'll probably do eventually. So the next book that I picked up was Devil in the Grove by Gilbert King, and the subtitle to this, and I'm going to look down at my computer to read this correctly, is Thurgood Marshall, The Groveland Boys, and the Dawn of a New America. Now, this is a book that I have had on my list of books to read since before I started BookTube. I would see it all the time at like the library and bookstores, and it has like a different cover. Obviously, this is like the special Harper Perennial Olive editions that has like the pretty stripes and everything. So it just got released this year in this edition. So when I saw that, I was very excited. And then I was in Atlanta recently, and when I was there, I obviously went to a bookstore and they had the new Olive edition. So I picked this one up immediately and knew I was going to finally buy it and read it. And oh man, it's so good. This is definitely my favorite read of the month. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was almost a 5-star read for me. I was debating a lot between 4 and 5 stars with this book. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. So this book follows this specific case that Thurgood Marshall helped defend. It follows these 4 guys named the Groveland Boys because it takes place in Groveland, Florida, who are accused of raping this white woman in the 40s or the 50s? 1949. That's when it happened. So I was right with that estimation. Yeah, this is so well written. The story is so compelling, and I didn't know anything about the case other than this is a case that occurred. So I had no idea what the outcome was going to be at the end of the story. And man, there's so many just like shocking and appalling things that happen in here. It's a really great look at the way that the justice system can be twisted and used to not have the right outcome occur, and also just like the failings of like the police forces and things like that. I felt like Gilbert King does a really good job of providing a lot of context too for the time period and also just like where they're living and like the specific things that are happening in Groveland. This is a book that feels like it should be made into a movie for sure, because there's just so many twists and turns. It's like completely unbelievable, some of the stuff that happens to these 4 boys, and there were like parts where I was just stopped in my tracks by pure shock of the events that occurred. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. Don't be put off by like the size of this if it seems slightly intimidating, because it is a thicker book, because this is like mass market paperback size, so it's like going to be a little bit fatter than a typical trade paperback. I think the typical trade paperback's only about like 400 and something pages, and there's a significant amount of like notes and glossary and like references at the end. But also it's just a really compelling readable story. If there's one book this month that I would want you guys to read, it would be this one. And then for Dewey's 24-hour readathon, I picked up 2 books. The first one was Ms. Marvel Volume 6, which is Civil War. This was okay until the very end, because this is one of those that like ties into like the big Marvel Civil War thing that they were doing over the summer, and those are always just like meh to me. But I do really like the things that Ms. Marvel explores in this sort of volume, especially because there's this whole storyline of Captain Marvel coming out with this program where they can sort of like detect crimes before they're happening, and Ms. Marvel originally is like okay with it because she's like, oh, this is great. No one I know has to get hurt or get in trouble or any of these things, because they'll figure out who's going to do a crime before it happens, and then it turns into this thing about like racial profiling and stuff like that, which is just aces. But then also a bunch of stuff happens at the end of the story with Bruno, and just oh, my heart. I'm not going to spoil it because I know people are just not necessarily caught up with the series, like they read it in trades like I do. But yeah, I need to go out and pick up Volume 7 as soon as possible because, oh, Bruno. So yeah, still love the series, still highly recommend it. And then the final book that I picked up for Dewey's 24-hour readathon, but I didn't finish it until the next day, is The Power by Naomi Alderman. This book really disappointed me. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. Did not enjoy it whatsoever. I found the writing to be really not great. I should probably explain what this book is about. Basically, it takes place in this world where girls suddenly have the power to like do extreme like physical harm, as well as they have this sort of like electrical type power to them. No one really knows why it's happening. It might be like a genetic mutation or something along those lines. And you follow, I think it's like 4 or 5 different points of view as like this is happening and as it progresses over time. There's so many problems I had with this. It's such a good concept that's so poorly executed. First of all, I hate multiple perspective books. I say this all the time. It's very rarely executed well. If this book had been 2, maybe 3 perspectives, I would have been so much happier because it's so split. I felt like you don't get to know any of the characters really well, and you don't get to really understand what's happening in this world. You're just sort of like jumping back and forth between all the different perspectives and seeing how like different people are dealing with the power and how it's affecting their society. I wasn't really crazy about the way that they portrayed like women in the Middle East, like as if the power structures change, they all would automatically sort of react in this way. I didn't find the ending to be very satisfying. They do this thing where they're like 9 years to go, and then it'll be like a couple of chapters, and then it'll be like 8 years to go, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like the reason why I kept reading this book is just because I wanted to know what it was counting down to. And it's also sort of set in this structure where like the beginning and the end for like the first like 5 pages and like the last 5 pages or 10 pages or whatever is like this person writing to someone else saying, hey, I've written this history about this thing that occurred, read it. And then the power is sort of like this middle section that you're reading. And then the end is like them talking about the book that they had written and whether or not it's realistic. And I just found that whole thing to be stupid and didn't really add anything to it for me. The idea is really interesting again, but I feel like it didn't really go anywhere. I feel like she just sort of flipped the genders and put them into the other gender stereotypes and then didn't really do much more than that. Yeah, not really my jam. Yeah, it happens. So yeah, that's everything that I've finished so far this month. So the book that I am currently reading is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which I'm really enjoying so far. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm only at like the halfway mark right now. And again, I don't have a lot of time to read, so I'm basically just reading it on the train, and it's like a slower read, like it's a bit of a slow burn, so I don't want to just like rush through it. I kind of want to just take my time with it and enjoy it. So yeah, that's probably like the only book I might finish before the month's out. So yeah, that's everything that I have for you guys. Feel free to leave a comment down below letting me know what you guys read this month, or what your favorite book was that you read this month, or if you have any questions or opinions about any of the books that I talked about, definitely leave that down in the comments below as well. If you read The Power and you liked it, feel free to tell me why you liked it. I don't think that like anyone's opinion is wrong when it comes to liking or not liking books. So you're welcome to disagree with me and to tell me why you enjoyed the book. I definitely would like to know that because I do always like to see sort of like other people's perspectives when it comes to books. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.